Imagine for a second that you've been trying to heat an ice cube in a cold room. You start at 25 degrees. You work hard. You push the temperature to 26, 27, 28. Nothing happens. 29, 30, 31. Still just a solid block of ice. You feel like you're failing, right? But then you hit 32 degrees. Suddenly, the ice melts. That 1 degree shift didn't do all the work. It was the result of every degree that came before it. If you've ever felt like you're working your heart out but seeing zero results, you aren't failing. You're just hitting the plateau of latent potential. Today, I'm going to show you how to break through that plateau. By the end of this conversation, you won't just have a list of tips, you'll have a completely different operating system for your life. One where success becomes an automated byproduct of who you are, rather than something you have to chase. This is the core philosophy of James Clear's masterpiece, Atomic Habits. It's arguably the most influential book on human behavior in the last decade, and for good reason. It moves away from the hustle and grind clichés and looks at the cold, hard science of why we do what we do. Let's get real for a moment. Most of us focus on goals. We want the six-pack, the six-figure bank account, or the finished novel. But James Clear makes a point that changed my entire perspective. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Think about it. The winner and the loser of a race both have the exact same goal, to win. So, the goal itself can't be what makes the difference. If you've ever felt frustrated that you haven't reached your big dream yet, please know you're not alone. It's not that you're lazy, it's just that you're focusing on the finish line instead of the track you're running on. The first step to fixing this is understanding the 1% rule. If you get 1% better at something every day for a year, you don't just get 3 times better. Through the power of compounding, you end up 37 times better. Conversely, if you get 1% worse, you decline almost down to 0. Here is how you apply this. Stop trying to overhaul your entire life in a weekend. If you want to read more, don't try to read 50 pages tonight. Read just 1 page. That 1% seems insignificant today, but it's the atomic unit that builds a massive explosion of results later. But here's the tricky part. Why is it so hard to make these small changes stick? It's because we usually try to change the wrong thing. Most people try to change their outcomes, what they get, or their processes, what they do. But the most effective way to change is to change your identity. Imagine 2 people offered a cigarette. The first says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." The second says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." It's a tiny difference in words, but a massive difference in psychology. The first person still believes they are a smoker trying to be someone else. The second person has already shifted who they are. If you've been struggling to stay consistent, it's likely because your habits are at war with your identity. You might want a better body, outcome, but if you still identify as someone who isn't an athlete, you'll subconsciously sabotage yourself. To apply this tomorrow, stop asking, "What do I want to achieve?" and start asking, "Who is the type of person who could achieve that?" A person who writes a book is a writer. Every time you sit down to write even 1 sentence, you're casting a vote for that new identity. You aren't just writing, you are becoming a writer. Now, even with the right identity, we often rely too much on willpower. And let's be honest, willpower is a finite resource. It runs out by 6 p.m. after a long day at work. This is where James Clear talks about the invisible hand of your environment. We think we choose our habits, but often our environment chooses them for us. We drink water because it's on the desk. We scroll through our phones because they're in our pockets. If you find yourself failing to stick to a routine, don't blame your character. Look at your room. It's much easier to practice the guitar if it's standing in the middle of your living room than if it's tucked away in a closet. I call this environment design. If you want to eat healthier, chop up vegetables on Sunday and put them at eye level in the fridge. If you want to stop wasting time on social media, put your phone in another room. Stop trying to be disciplined and start making your good habits obvious and your bad habits invisible. You want to be the architect of your world, not the victim of it. I know what you're thinking. That sounds great, but starting is still the hardest part. You're right. The friction of starting is where most dreams go to die. That's why you need to use the 2-minute rule. It's simple. When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. Read before bed becomes read 1 page. Do 30 minutes of yoga becomes get out my yoga mat. The goal isn't to do the whole task. The goal is to master the art of showing up. A habit must be established before it can be improved. You can't optimize a habit that doesn't exist. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the big picture, just give yourself permission to do the first 2 minutes. That's it. Once you start, the proprioception of the task takes over, and the rest usually follows. Lastly, we have to talk about why we stop. We stop because bad habits have immediate rewards, the sugar hit, the dopamine of a like, while good habits have delayed rewards. The cost of your good habits is in the present. The cost of your bad habits is in the future. To fix this, you need to make your good habits feel satisfying right now. Clear suggests using a habit tracker. There's a primitive, satisfying click in our brains when we cross something off a list or add a streak to an app. It provides immediate visual evidence that you are becoming the person you want to be. And here is the golden rule for when life gets in the way, because it will. Never miss twice. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new habit. If you miss a workout, fine, but don't let yourself miss the next one. Looking back at that ice cube, remember, the work you do today isn't being wasted, it's being stored. All the big breakthroughs you see in others are just the result of many 1% moments that finally reached the melting point. You don't need a total life transformation today. You just need a better system. You need to cast one small vote for the person you want to become. If you could change just one tiny habit starting tomorrow, something that takes less than 2 minutes, what would it be? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what identity you're building. And if you found this helpful, you might want to stick around for our next deep dive into the systems that actually run our lives. Until then, remember, focus on the system, not the goal. I'll see you in the next one.